Okeechobee Utility Authority, October 14th, 2019, at 10:02 a.m. At this time, I ask you to please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'm going to take the determination of voting members. Melanie Anderson.
Present.
Mr. Tommy Clay.
Here.
Mr. John Kreisman.
Here.
Mr. Jeff Fadley. Mr. Harry Mollenhauer.
Here.
Mr. Carl Leonard. Myself, present. Moving on to, yes, sir.
Chairman, just before you leave this, I'd like to make sure to point out that our next meeting is on November 12th, which is a Tuesday, due to the Monday holiday.
Okay.
You might want to send out a reminder.
Yes.
This is one thing I said before, but we'll send out another reminder.
Yeah.
Okay. So noted. We move on to item agenda number 2, the meetings of our previous meeting, which was held on September 9th, 2019. Are there any additions, deletions to our last minutes? If not, may I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Make a motion we accept as written.
I have a motion to accept. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to our
Minutes.
Minutes of your special
Again,
meeting.
My computer is not cooperating. All right. Item agenda number 3, special meeting minutes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to the next consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item number 9 just for clarification on something.
Okay. Any other items to be taken out?
I make a motion we accept the consent agenda with 9 being pulled.
Second.
Motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
We just go
Go
straight to
down
9.
to item number 9.
Mr. Hayford, this is the McNabb Hydrology Consulting and Permit. Is this in concert with the testing that South Florida Water Management did, that we were supposed to be reimbursed for?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we are going to bill them for this.
I will check on that to make sure if it hasn't already been billed. This was the amount. I'll have to go back and check, but what this represents is the permit modification that we submitted to raise our disposal capacity from roughly 4 MGD to 18. I do not know if that fell. It was in the Water Management District contract, but because they stopped the work after the report, I believe it was an authorization by the OUA to go ahead and get this permit modification since all the work, field work was done. But I'll get you an answer whether or not it is to be reimbursed or whether it is an expense of the OUA.
That's my recollection is it's an expense of the OUA that we were not going to be
Do you
reimbursed.
know that for a fact? Is it?
We just decided to go ahead and do it.
George is telling me also with Harry and my recollection that it is an expense of the OUA.
That's what I needed.
And-
It just wasn't clear.
And we have the permit in hand. It has been up to the 18+ million gallons a day.
Thank you.
We'll still need a motion to approve the expense, though.
Okay, make a motion, we approve the expense to McNabb Hydrology for,
I have a
what was
motion by Mr. Kreisman.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Clay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item agenda number 12, Kings Bay Maintenance Agreement.
Mr. Chairman and board members, you have in this particular agenda item once a year that the OUA staff goes back and looked at the previous year work orders and expenses incurred in Kings Bay to determine their monthly payment because of all the pump stations that are out there serving Kings Bay. For the coming year, 2019, that monthly fee calculated is $5.47 per account, down from $5.80 in the last year. These records were sent to the Homeowners Association, and I haven't heard anything back from them questioning our calculation.
And they're not here anywhere either, so.
I'm surprised Mary's not here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That may be a good sign.
Do I have a motion to accept the new monthly fee of $5.40?
So moved.
I have a motion.
47 cents.
547, excuse me.
I'll second.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Sorry about that, boss.
Okay, sir. Moving on to item agenda number 13.
Mr. Chairman, board members, you have in your package, this item is dealing with the Southeast 8th Avenue water main replacement. As noted in the board package, bids were received and opened on September 30th, 2019 in the afternoon. In your attachments is the recommendation of award letter from the consulting engineer, Holtz Consulting Engineers. Also in that letter is the bid tab of the bids received on this particular project, and certainly the recommendation of award. If the discussions and the board approves this recommendation of award, we would enter into, with the selected contractor, to provide the agreement and the noticed public bonds and payment bonds, and bring all that back at the next meeting for review, discussion, and approval at that time. And if it is, we would issue the notice to proceed, and they would get started on this project. The engineer is here this morning. If you had some questions of either staff or the engineer, we'd be happy to try to answer them.
I have a question for staff.
Yes, sir.
We've used this contractor that's recommended by them before, and I understand there were some issues. Are you comfortable with working with them this time?
I'm not sure of the issues that you're talking about, but they did do Better Acres and they did do Pine Ridge Park, and they are an exceptionally good contractor.
Okay. I remember some items came back to us with this, and it had something to do with paving, I believe, and some issues on how they left an area.
There were some, yes, sir, in Better Acres, there were some issues that a homeowner had about sod or issues in the right-of-way. And then there were some paving issues, but all of those, to my knowledge, were reviewed by the county, and that project was accepted. So at the end of the day, everybody, I think, was satisfied, and we move on with that contractor. So the recommendation certainly would be to, yes, utilize this contractor, and certainly from a staff perspective, based upon the bids, I would certainly recommend that we exercise the alternative to remove the AC pipe from the right-of-way so that we, the OUA, does not have to deal with that down the road, as far as in the road right-of-way.
You got to deal with them, we don't. Just asking to make sure.
Sir?
You have to deal with them, we don't as a board until later. Just want to make sure you're comfortable.
Well, yes, we all are in this together, because you would hear from the residents,
And the county commission.
political, and obviously, have to deal with the contractual, whether that's a progress payment or change orders. Yes, sir.
beginning of the pipe replacement would start where?
I don't believe that is really our choice. Certainly, we would discuss that with the selected contractor, the MOT, maintenance of traffic, and work through that with them. I do not know exactly where they would want to start. We didn't really specify that as far as the means and methods of them to do the work. What we have specified is that maintenance of traffic is a big issue on several of those roads, and that we have to understand what their schedule is and how they're going to be dealing with that maintenance of traffic.
To be clear, the amount that you are recommending is the total alternative A amount of $598,400. I mean, that hadn't been said, and that's the reason I wanted to clarify that.
That was the big amount.
Well, yes, sir. It is the not the base bid of the 515, but it's with A,
Total
which is
alternative
the
A, which
Yes,
is
sir.
$598,400.
yes, sir.
Which includes removal of the old asbestos mains.
That is
Removal and
correct,
disposal.
and disposal.
I have a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the bid of Go Underground Utilities LLC, alternative A amount of $598,400.
I have a motion by Mr. Clay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Kariseman. Any further discussion? All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, so we will work with the selected contractor and bring back those documents for review, discussion, and approval at the next meeting.
I'd like to, work closely with them, since I happen to live in that area. I'm affected by it as well.
I believe that's where they were going to put the dewatering pump.
The septic tank, I believe, is over there as well. But I've had a lot of neighbors come to me on both sides of Southeast 8th Avenue and 8th Drive.
I got hit last weekend.
So,
It's a recurring deal. I know I have reached out to a couple folks, even just to let them know about this meeting, that we were going to be considering the bids, and that actual work is unfortunately going to be starting peak season. But it is what it is. We need to get it done, and the repairs need to be made, and we'll move on.
I feel comfortable with you out there flagging that we can get it done quite expeditiously.
no problem. Moving on to item agenda number 14, Southwest Section Financing Options.
Mr. Chairman and board members, you will find part of agenda item 14 in your board package that was emailed out to you this morning. At your place settings, you have the complete package of all the options that we looked at. You have seen all these options before previously, but the biggest element that you need to be aware of is that as of the last special meeting where there was the allocation of the $6 million grant monies to be applied to this project in total, I went ahead and added that amount into this. So if you can give me a few moments, I can run through these options quickly if you would like.
Please.
Okay. Option A is the construction of the total project, both what we call Project 1 and 2, as well as the connecting force main from the project area up to NW15. These are broken into two different columns. On the left-hand column is the planning and design cost. Right-hand column represents construction cost. If you'll go down through that first group, you will see in the middle between the two columns, the total estimated contract or construction price is at currently just under $13,950,000. The next group of numbers is the application of the previous appropriation, where we split it between design at $150,000 and construction at $373,000. The next is the allocation of the $6 million. Understand this as a placeholder. It was $500,000 was applied to the design planning cost, $5.5 million towards construction. If you look at that total amount of appropriations, it's about $6,523,000. Going down to the next one, group is the loan servicing fees and documents, subtracting out the $6.5 million from the $13.950 leaves you a net of $7,594,122. Looking at a 20-year payback, amortization rates, the estimated annual debt service is going to be roughly $383,786. Do I have any questions on that page? Flipping over, you go to option A1. A1 is an option. It certainly, if we do this option, it does present other problems in that we don't have the total number of customers connections, which applies to us long term on the annual debt service. But that being what it said, option A1 is just doing phase one and the force main connecting, giving you a total construction price of $11,323,000. Again, applying the $523 and the $6 million, looking at the loan servicing fees, you end up with a net of $4,910,000. Again, applying the 20-year payback, interest rates, it gives you a $248,258 estimated annual debt service fee over 20 years. Any questions on A1? Moving on to the next page, option B. This is to construct the phase one, the NW15 force main. That's the initial work, followed closely by finishing up the project with phase two. Again, same process, construction of phase one, applying the $6 million, $523, leaves you a net total of the first phase, $4.9 million. Amortization rate over 20 years with those loan documents, $248,258. If we do phase two, there is the construction cost, just a little over $3 million. Same type of 20-year amortization schedule. The interest charge leaves you $157,980, giving you a total of $406,238. And the same as option C is constructing phase two first, force main followed by phase one. You can see all the numbers. It's the same process. We end up with a total new annual debt service charge of $423,752. Those are the four projects that we looked at, giving you a wide range. If we go to the next page, page 6, this was what was projected before. We have since received direction to pay off the SRF2 utilizing the land sales money. And so when we do that, we can look at the only thing that is a little bit different that we did use. There are almost $36,000 in the FY20 budget. So it lowered the annual debt service savings of $318,644 to $282,658. The next row down, you can see that there are across the top under the project-specific debt service. Those are from the preceding 4 pages, applying the savings of $282,658 that we no longer have in our annual budgeting forecast, leaves you the new annual debt service for each of these 4 projects. Everybody with me up to that point? Okay, moving on over to page 7. What are we doing on page 7? Page 7 is looking at a couple things to point out. What it basically does on page 7 is utilizing some of the base rate billed to the project-specific residential connections, understanding that we balance the budget, all the expenses off of our current customers. So whatever the new customers connecting, this is unallocated resources coming in on a monthly basis. So we've had this discussion in the past that we could utilize a portion of these base rates from the new customers to help pay down the debt service. For this particular allocation, we assigned a 50% utilization rate on the base rates for debt retirement. One thing to point out, the preliminary engineering report that was done, or technical memorandum that was done several years ago, identified a potential of 748 connections. It's my understanding under the current engineering proposal that's being reviewed and will be presented shortly in the facilities plan, that 748 number has now dropped to 555. Partly due, it's not known for sure, but partly due to existing wastewater customers in the Oak Tree Terrace, down by Wolf Road. They are currently our customers, and they may have been included in that 748. So what I've done is use the number that they are projecting, 555, distributed them along the same routes as before, which is probably not necessarily, it should have been, the lessening should have been more in phase 1 than phase 2, but for the sake of this document, the 555 was distributed over phase 1 and 2 at the same rate. Bottom line is, when you apply the 50% base charge, it nets in a savings of about $74,500. If I go down to the next column, you see where that $75,000 is applied to what is now the new net annual debt service. You can see what's left behind, the $26,669, $49,000, or the 66. The next step was to adjust the rates to make up that delta. And you can see that if we raise rates approximately 751%, we can make up the 26,000. Option A1, which is not, it doesn't need anything. Options B and C, you'd have to raise rates about 1.5 to 2% to make up that difference. This whole scenario is going to be looked at by PRMG, which is doing the rate feasibility study. So they will come up with their own numbers, but this is just staff's look at it as to where we would have to go with rates if we utilize 50% of the base rate to pay down the debt. If we didn't use any, that would be the 0%. You can see that rates would have to go up from 3% to 4.25 to make up that difference. Any questions on this page? Okay. Flipping over to the next to last page. This was a scenario where we looked at possibly using the same 50% base rates, but rather than doing a rate increase, we looked at assessments on those properties benefiting from the project. So again, using the 50% generates the same number, about $75,000. And to do the monthly assessment to make up the difference under the different options, it would range anywhere from $0 to $10 a month on the assessments of those properties. If we went with the 0% base rates, the assessments would range from $0 to $21 per property per month. So that's where we're at with it. I would certainly open it up to suggestions that we'll have a presentation, or we'll have some discussions next with the engineering group. But the thought process is that with the $6 million, we would move forward with the pump station and the force main up to NW15, which will not have any impact on whether we do phase 1 and 2, phase 1, phase 2. That's going to be decided in the next segment. But clearly, you have the numbers that what we looked at, 500,000 of the $6 million going towards the planning design element, and the bulk of the money, 5.5 million, going towards construction. Now, I will tell you, from an engineering aspect, we can get into this later, but there is an element where we looked at joining the force main going to SE2, which is, I think, on 2nd Avenue, tying that into this regional pump station. And there is some benefits to that from taking some pressure, hydraulic pressure off of SE2, plus putting this force main, the new pump station and force main into service. We really could use those flows coming over from the existing customers to make the operational capabilities of the new pump station and force main to work. So it's more of an engineering aspect. I believe that cost was somewhere around $650,000 to be able to do that. And I would certainly suggest that that's something that we do look at. So, financing options, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
John, the only question I have is option A.
Yes, sir.
Project. Is that doable? Do we meet the 2-year window clarification with that, or criteria with that?
The 2-year window is the desired window. It's not hard and fast, but I do believe we can talk about that here at the next, where we get into the specifics. But I had proposed a schedule to the engineering group where it looks like we could do it if we focused on the pump station and the force main. The only caveat to that is acquisition of easements, however long that would take, because the proposed pipeline route is on private property. So we estimated a window for acquiring easements. If we stay in that window, 2 years is doable. If it gets to be problematic and we have to redo work and go elsewhere, it's going to delay it a little bit. Unfortunately, our window for delay is right up in the front rather than being on the tail end of the project.
Whether you change the word from could to can. You said it could be doable, it can be doable.
On paper right now, it's certainly doable, but with any construction project of this magnitude, it would be foolish for me to tell you right now there will be no hiccups. There will be challenges along the way. And unfortunately, right now, the challenges appear to be potentially more up front, which pushes everything back behind it. But that's just what we got to do. And we've already started that process of looking at routes and trying to open up dialogue with certain individuals.
At the last meeting, or the special meeting, Commissioner Burrows brought up the prospect of going into the area they were working at now and getting some of our construction done. Would that be an option to, shorten the window of time?
The area that they're talking about is down in the collection system. Mm-hmm. We're talking about from Old Dixie, 16th or 15th, depending if you're in the city or the county, northward. Right. They're down back almost all the way to Wolf Road. The only thing that is holding up that design element is the completion of the facilities report they're working on right now. And once that is accepted, so we know whether we're doing vacuum sewer collection, gravity collection, low pressure, once the collection method has been approved, we would initiate that design on that element to assist the county in getting in and getting out beforehand. But we just have to go through that step of completing the facilities plan.
So the private property we're looking at is going to be crossing 70?
Northward from Old Dixie. Right now, it's going up the ditch line, and so there will be several property owners north of there. Once we cross over to 70, we're primarily going to be in county right-of-way.
Okay.
And then there will be one element where we, that I can remember off the top of my head, we're up on the FAA property, county airport.
Right.
And we would have to access or get an easement across there. Now, depending upon what the property owners between Old Dixie and 70 tell us, may mean that we have to adjust our route.
Because if the FAA is an issue, I know you can fall back to another property owner there that's, then cross. Pretty, I think, without being bold, I think you can cross there.
Well, and then we always have the option of going a little bit further east and going up 9th Avenue,
Yeah, and
if we had to. Go down 9th Street to 9th Avenue and cut up that way. It's just, we're down to, rather than drawing the line on the piece of paper from the bird's eye view, we're now on the ground having to walk it out and making sure that that would work.
okay.
So it's just a step we have to go through. If we were in county, city, state right-of-ways, water management district, I'd have a little higher comfort level that we're good, but when we're dealing with property owners, it's just an unknown. So we'll work forward from here, if this is the direction that we do want to go, that we're looking at spending the $6 million on the pump station and the force main. That at least gives us more direction where we got to go, and we'll bring it back at the November meeting, because it's going to mean some slight changes to the engineering scope of work and fee schedule, because they weren't contemplating this accelerated path and going forward with just the pump station as a separate bid item. But it's all manageable. We just have to go through it and work through the paperwork and the contractual ends of it and make it happen.
Where is I wasn't here last time, so where is the pump station going?
The initial projections had it at on 16th Street at the ditch line that runs north and south there, just west of Eagle Bay. So it's before you get to the Oak Park area.
Right.
It's right there on that corner. And we've reached out to both the school district, which is on one side of it, and the private property owner on the other side. And then whichever way we can work a green light, if the engineering, the facilities plan that they're working on says that is a great location, either one of those, if we get a green light from one or the other, then we start from there and work our way northward.
Has the school been put on hold out there, that property?
There are no plans right now. Actually, we're in a declining enrollment,
Right.
so there's no pressure to build. I mean, it's nice to have the site, but there are no immediate plans, I can tell you that.
So the financing options is just for information only, or are you looking for a direction from the board today, or?
Well, I guess we can save the direction for the next agenda item, but what we would like to see, what I would like to see, is that the concept of moving forward with the pump station and the force main is the appropriate avenue that we move forward in spending the $6 million, specifically on that project. It helps us out with the timeline. If the Okatani project happens, it helps us out with that one because this element is the northern segment of the Okatani project. So it is beneficial in that respect.
You're saying option A1 then?
Option A, choosing to put the money towards the pump station and the force main going north is the option of the portion of the work out of option A that I would suggest.
Right.
So we can deal with that in the next agenda item, which is more specifically the project update for the Southwest wastewater service area. Or we could do it now. It's just spelled out here in this one exactly where to allocate the $6 million in that 5.5 million and 500,000.
All right, going back to, I understand the 6 million and having to spend it. And I just don't want to get too far away from getting those folks off septic, which would now be phase 2. Is it still phase 1? Okay.
Well, we would probably end up renumbering it if you want to, that phase 1 is the pump station and force main, and phase 2 would be the project area.
Okay, all right, that's what I'm getting at.
And we are still working on that. It's just that when we get the facilities plan done, going through the USDA loan grant process, we get the facilities, and then we start talking about the project-specific
Okay.
area.
All right, I just don't want to get away from that.
You and me both. I don't want a pump station out there with nobody connected.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I don't want to lose sight of the total project with the funding that we're seeking and all that by piecemealing this thing out. That's why I like the option A, which is the whole project.
Project.
Right?
Yes, sir.
We go. And they're doing construction. Of course, that makes common sense to do the so-called backbone first and maybe some more potential customers up north that we haven't even discussed at this point to come on later on. Down the road.
That was one of the selections of that particular site for the pump station.
Sure.
There is a lot of property north of there that if it were to develop.
Sure. So, yeah, as a board or as a board member, let's look at this whole thing as the project. Go for the funding, everything we need to do for the project, and then when construction happens in engineering, that'll all come together as needed. But that was one of my main concerns when they did give us a $6 million allotment in that 2-year window, meeting that timeline. But it seems like you've got a plan with the pump station and back to the airport
It's doable. Yes, sir.
It can be done, not could be done. It can be done.
Okay.
Okay?
We heard it, John. You say get it done.
I want a shovel in the ground, not 2 years later.
That being said, John, I mean, running I know we've got running up the county ditch and stuff and then cutting back over, putting a pump station there on that corner. But what about going north on through where the school property is and coming out on 70 on the county ditch there at Jim Harvey's? Is that what you're thinking or, okay. All right, we're on the
You have to
same
cross
page
the
then.
Water Management District facility.
Facility, yeah, and then that puts us up by Jim's. Then we got to worry about how to go from there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, that's just making sure I've got it correct. Because that also opens the door to Dewberry Gardens and things like that in the future.
Well,
Like coming
it
out
does provide the force main in that vicinity that we could tie into.
Yeah, okay. All right, I got a little better picture now.
Regarding this agenda item, though, financing options, I mean, do you need something from us, or do you have a recommendation? As
Well,
far as-
clearly, I've heard from at least one person, but option A appears to be the option of preference, and we can forget about the A1, B, and C and focus clearly on the total project of $13.95 million.
That's,
Right, but that doesn't really address financing options. I mean,
We won't know that, if you remember. Two things have to happen. PRMG is doing a more detailed rate analysis. And then once the facilities plan is in place and we actually get the, way down the road, when we get the obligation letter from the USDA and we know the grant participation and the actual rates, we can hone in on an exact cost.
okay.
But so long as we know we're moving forward with option A, so if you actually wanted to have a motion that we move forward with option A, we could do that, and we know which way we're headed.
I thought we'd already done that, but I mean, are you wanting reinforcement on that?
I don't think we have done option A. We have, the only thing I can remember is last special meeting, we did allocate the $6 million towards this project.
so now you're basically, we're all in agreement on A, I guess. Yes. So now, Tom, do you want to,
I have no problem with you endorsing option A of the options that are before you here, if that's what they're seeking. I thought it was already done, but
Okay.
rather than piecemeal it out, it's a project instead of a series of projects,
absolutely.
and it's option A.
I make a motion that we move forward with the Southwest Service Area, option A, construct both Phase 1 and Phase 2, and the Northwest 15 force main, with the option of changing the phases,
The numbering and.
the numbering of the phases.
Well, you don't need to worry about that part of it. You're approving the project as a whole.
Okay.
Right. I have a motion by Mr. Clay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The only other motion that we would certainly like to follow up with then is that the distribution of the $6 million to be allocated towards, moving forward with the pump station and the force main to NW15.
John, we've already given you allocation of that $6 million to
It goes to
the
the
southwest
project.
section. So
It goes to the project. I mean,
is this redundant then?
Oh, it
We've already
needs
given
your
it to the
design.
project, use it where needed?
Okay, both of you were speaking at the same time. Which,
I'm sorry, Harry.
No, I jumped on you. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
I don't remember what I said.
Being that the money's been allocated
is-
already, you have the discretion of how to spend the money.
if that's yours, I'm happy to do with that also.
that's getting into micromanagement.
Right.
Okay.
You've already approved the $6 million and the project, and that's where it's going. So I don't know that you get into,
I have my shopping cart and I will go fill it.
Just remember, we don't want it to be refunded back.
I have my shopping cart. I will fill it up and I will proceed to the checkout counter.
If you need any help with that, I'm available, like your evaluation.
Sir, I mean, yeah, I can take whatever I can get.
Moving on to item agenda number 15.
Okay, so we've talked about the options of financing. We know we're going with A. Here is the only thing I did not bring, but we developed that late on Thursday, was the actual schedule. But be that as it may, that is open for discussion. Mr. Jeff Sumner with Sumner Engineering is here this morning to be with staff. You can look at a lot of this as something that we just talked about doing, the design of the pump station. We will evaluate this interconnect between the SC2 force main and our new proposed pump station. But again, our first pass at that, there are some very, very positive reasons for considering that. We will move forward with the actual design of the pump station and the force main to bring back the plans and specifications and get this out to bid. I guess I do have some of the time limit there. You can see that it does fall within the 24-month window, with that one caveat of acquiring easements, rights of way, in the preliminary end of the project. So that being said, if this is certainly doable and agreeable, and if you had some questions, I'm here, and Jeff Sumner is here to talk about the project in specific. What he can certainly share with you is where we're at with the facilities plan and the USDA options.
I just one question with this SE2 to the Southwest Pump Station tie. You threw a number up, 600,000, let's say approximately. There's no funding mechanism on that, is there? We can't go out for grants on that. That's not. Is that just going to be something we'd have to bear the price? Needed, understood, but that's just a cost we're going to have to bear.
Well, it will be a cost. What we have to do is just to confirm from the engineering aspect that interconnect is, from an engineering design, is a method of choice. Where the cost would come from, it would either come into the $6 million grant, or it would be added to the overall project cost that would fall within the USDA loan grant documents. We would add it to that.
Sure, you could add it to that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And John, that's just bringing it down Old Dixie?
Yes, sir, depending, if we say it that way, or the 15th, 16th Street, yes, Old Dixie.
Okay.
I don't
But
know
it
all
would-
the street numbers. I was born here. That's Old Dixie.
It would tie.
Changes halfway down, so what do you call it?
Old Dixie is perfect. I don't have to get into 15th or 16th. But yes, sir, it would follow that road.
Okay.
Morning, Jeff. You got anything for us? Sitting there looking antsy.
He brought a big folder.
No, I'm really, I told John I was happy to be here to answer any questions. Jim Elder with Jones Edmonds, who's really doing the bulk of my heavy lifting for me on this one, is here as well. We are still on track to have the USDA package ready to go and submit to them in November, which was our schedule all along. We are going to modify that funding request a little bit to take out. We're still going to reference the master lift station and the force main, but since we have grant dollars to pay for that, that's actually going to come out of the funding request itself. We feel like that kind of shows that we've got other skin in the game, and that helps our cause as far as what USDA is looking at. I agree with your executive director that we could/can get that master lift station and force main completed in 2 years, but that it is very dependent on some pretty aggressive movements here in the early going as far as acquiring easements and property. That process is underway. I know Tom and I have both spoken with Ken Kenworthy regarding the school property. Tom has also reached out to the property owner, Billy Allen, or Billy's wife, I guess, on the east side of the ditch. I'm not sure. Tom, you and I need to catch up and see what you've heard back, if anything. Depending on which side of the ditch we go up with the force main, we are either talking to the Thomases and then Mr. Beatty for that piece of lot that's right next to Dad's house, or we're talking to the Fulfords if we're on the other side of the ditch. Then we get into the district right-of-way for a stretch. I've actually submitted that potential route to the district, and I'm supposed to hear back today what their requirements would be. Then we're into State Road 70 and county property until we get to the railroad. We'll have to go under the railroad. Jim's got some good contacts with CSX. We know what our requirements are there. Then it's a matter of getting either around or through the livestock market property, running probably up the east side of what had been, what used to be Royal Concrete, those 6 industrial lots that are owned by Copart. They've got a 25-foot landscape buffer on their east side they can't do anything with anyway. I've already talked to them about granting an easement to us to run up their property. Then we're back in County Road again until we cross 98, and then we're onto the airport property. What we do in the airport property is still a little bit up in the air. They've got an expansion plan. They've got a number of conservation easements over wetlands. I actually have a meeting this afternoon at 2 o'clock with the Deputy County Administrator and the Airport Director to talk about that. So we should have direction on that last little piece to NW15, here this
Who
afternoon,
the
the
landowner
next
is
couple of
on
days.
this side of the ditch, all the way to Ninth Street.
Yes, sir. Yep. I don't think really staying on the north side of the ditch in county property, that part's easy. It's the getting from there up to NW15 and how we, whether you go across the airport property, which there's a couple of different routes to go, and all of them have positives and negatives. There are some wetland conservation easements, and they do have an expansion plan for the airport, and I know that they're not going to want us putting lines under what could end up being a runway. But we have some options to go over, stay a little closer to the line between that property and the college, which really lines up almost directly within NW15 and run up there. But there's a lot of intricacies there as far as various property owners that we're going to have to talk to. We're trying to really nail that route down here in the next couple of weeks and get that process rolling, because that's really the linchpin for the schedule moving forward.
The ditch that runs in front of the soccer fields and all, it comes all the way there to the county ditch that goes towards the market, right? The O.L.E. Herbert ditch.
Yeah.
It goes be down the west side of IRSC, all
Yeah.
through there.
Okay, it goes all the way and ties in there.
Yep.
Okay. Problems on one side of the ditch, you won't
Could
have
go to the
problems
other.
on the other,
Understood.
because that's a heavy industrial park anyway,
Absolutely.
and it'd just be a benefit, I think. I think that could be sold very easily.
Yeah. We know who to talk to.
We know who to talk to.
Thank you, John.
All right. Thank you all.
Moving on to item agenda number 16.
Mr. Chairman and Board, members, we received a subordination agreement from the property owner who is building a veterinary hospital on 441 Southeast. Evidently, they are required to give up some of their front footage to the DOT, and the DOT is requiring us to sign this subordination agreement, of which I don't have a problem with. I believe Tom has reviewed it, does not have a problem with. So our recommendation is for the OUA board to approve the execution of this subordination agreement by the appropriate OUA personnel, whether chairman, executive director, whomever.
Tom, this is part of what's holding that up. That thing's been built forever.
I don't know whether that's holding it up or not,
It's my understanding, yes, it is.
but
I don't know. My understanding is that they.
Well, you raised your hand.
My understanding is that they did all of their site work without having applied for their driveway connection permit from DOT.
Okay. Sad.
So, yeah, well, you can see there's a gap there, a shell rock, between this road and where his new parking lot starts. But, so I don't think y'all have held this up.
Who?
I don't think that this process is.
Again, my only estimation is there was a problem with the driveway culvert, and so somewhere, some way on this project, inside that red square, somebody missed something. We were just asked to sign the subordination agreement. In that agreement, it talks about if we have facilities, they're going to reimburse us if they have to move them, so I'm okay with that.
So you just need a motion?
Motion to approve the execution of this
Doesn't
subordination.
require us to do anything at all, then.
No, sir, other than sign.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the OUA board chairman and staff to execute the FDOT subordination agreement.
I have a
Second.
motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item agenda number 17, proposed Taylor Creek water quality study proposal.
The original water quality study has been completed. I believe we've emailed copies of that report out. Essentially, it does validate the understanding that the nutrients and sucralose readings were higher on the Treasure Island side. This proposal is being requested, or certainly recommended. It is done by a different group, FAU, with the assistance of the laboratory at FIU, to go in and either validate the data that the first study produced, or come up with new data. Again, you can see the proposal in there as to the expected cost and the length of the study period and when the report would be generated at the conclusion of the sampling. I can entertain any questions or comments.
This is just validating the study that's already been done then.
Well, if it may validate, I mean, I would expect that the data will come up the same way, that there are higher sucralose values. We have added a couple sample sites to better define what we see out there, but I would expect it to be similar in nature. And then again, the benefit being that with one study group doing the first report, a second totally independent group doing the next report, that yes, the outcome is going to be validation that we could utilize for funding scenarios at the state level, documenting the difference between sewered area on the west and unsewered areas on the east, being Treasure Island.
We had talked at the last meeting about contacting another group, the one over in Stewart or whatever, to do the study. This doesn't supersede that.
Evidently, they're tied together with Harbor Branch. Dr. Brian LaPointe. This Dr. Lauda works in conjunction with him, so I haven't heard back from Dr. LaPointe. So I'm assuming they must have gotten together on their end to FAU, who they're still associated with, doing the study.
So we need a motion, Tom?
Yes, for the expense.
Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we allow OUA staff to, how do you want that, Tom? To move forward with the proposed Taylor Creek water quality study proposal with
FAU.
FAU.
And FIU. Okay.
FIU.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item agenda number 18, investment report.
As in your study here, you see the required investment policy or numbers that we have done for the previous years. George is here if you have some specific questions, answers that he can provide on our investment policy for the previous year, and certainly something that we would continue on for the coming year, if you have any questions.
Any questions from the board members?
Good job.
That's what we hired him to do, right?
Is that what we hired you to do? Yes, that was what we hired you to do.
Extra benefit.
Thank you very much, George.
We thank you.
Moving on to item agenda number 19, comments from the public. Please don't be bashful.
We've got 4 public here today. Moving up.
No? They say moving on up. Items from our attorney, Mr. Conley.
I don't know that I have anything earth-shaking to tell you guys.
Okay.
Still nothing with our cottages out on Mitchell Road.
We're going to be scheduling some more depositions than that. The pot's going to boil a little bit more. They're not scheduled right now. I'm not sure what's holding it up, but we had a conference with Mr. Melville a couple of weeks ago, and the emphasis was, if they want to sit on it, we're not going to let them just sit there and this thing stagnate. Let's push it. Let's push it. We're the defendant. It's unusual for a defendant to be pushing. Usually it's the plaintiff. So I'm not sure why they're sitting on their heels, but we're going to push that.
And primarily the reason why we want to push it is if we let it sit, it'll just come back in 2 or 3 years. People are gone, data may be lost. So let's just get this decided once and for all.
And be done with it.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is the second time where they've started it, stopped, started it, and now they're stopped again. We just need to keep going and get this resolved.
It's what, how many years?
No, it started in 12 or 11 or 10.
We've been working on it since pretty much 2010.
There just hadn't been a lawsuit.
Ever since
up
I've been on
until-
the board, we've been dealing with this.
Oh, it needs to be resolved, needs
Yes.
to be ended, so.
Yes.
Item number 21, items from the executive director.
You can see what's in the board package. We did have the local delegation meeting, of which our chairman presented the issues and priorities of the OUA. I believe we alluded to the fact that there could be a positive settlement in the State Road 710 extension, the setback requirements from our wellhead to the DOT right-of-way, and I have included a letter of an understanding, if you will, the DOT provided to us that does allocate that setback requirement from our property line, our wellhead, to their southerly right-of-way line. We're ongoing with the DEP work, both for the Southwest Wastewater Service Area as well as Lakeview Estates, which is still pending out there, where there is a grant award for a private contractor to do a demonstration project at our facility. Hopefully we will have those both ready to go and brought back at the November meeting for your review, discussion, and consideration. Also at your place setting, it's nice that Holtz is still here, but we did receive an invoice from them over the weekend, better late than never, in the amount of $2,080.80. It was delivered late, but if you don't review it, discuss, and approve it today, it'll come back at the November meeting. It's up to the pleasure of the board whether or not we go ahead and do this invoice, pay the invoice for $2,080.80 to Holtz, which we certainly would recommend doing.
So said.
So I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Other than that, I think that about covers everything that I have pending right now.
Thank you, sir. Item agenda number 22. Anything from our board members at this time? If not, this meeting is adjourned.